The movie you're about to see explores some of the most haunted areas in the Upper Great Lakes. On this journey, we'll look into the mysterious past that led to the haunting of the Raspberry Island Lighthouse, located in the Apostle Islands on western Lake Superior. We'll also visit with an old fisherman at Choix Pointe and relive his childhood spiritual experiences on the south shore of the Upper Peninsula. Crossing over to Gull Island, we'll witness a creature emerge from the Gull Island reefs and observe other strange phenomena on the island. Yet, our story begins to the east, at the Straits of Mackinac, an area of great energy where two large bodies of water, Lake Huron and Lake Michigan, collide. It's here that we find one of the most haunted places on the Great Lakes, the city of St. Ignace, one of the oldest settlements in the United States. Here we'll witness three hauntings, as recalled by the people who experienced those unearthly events near this old and historic city. Great wars and bloodshed taint the history of St. Ignace. For decades, soldiers fell and souls lingered. St. Ignace was a battlefield of conquerors, culture, and destiny. Perhaps the voices of those who died in battle remain in the wind, the last breath of a native people who fought to halt the move toward future settlements. Is this why the locals say the area around the Straits of Mackinac, especially St. Ignace, is haunted? It's an area rich in history, but tainted by superstition. The discovery of bone pits tells us that the early tribes took part in an ancient ritual of burial and reburial. To the early Huron and Ottawa tribes, death was a journey. Native customs declared that the souls of their people were to live in a state of unrest, wanderers from the moment of death to the festival of the dead years later when bodies were defleshed, removing the last bit of life that bound their spirits to the world. As the population grew and the area developed during the next 200 years, construction began to unearth these mass graves. Did these disturbances disrupt the spiritual journey of the dead? In St. Ignace, did tragedy, war, and misfortune open a portal into a past that will not sleep, into a city forever haunted by the ghosts at the Straits of Mackinac? Today, on the historic streets of St. Ignace, remnants of the past live on, as many of the original buildings still remain. Since 1895, when Mackinac Island became Michigan's first state park, tourism and nostalgia have become commodities riding the currents at the Straits of Mackinac. Kevin Campbell of the Mackinac Shirt Company greets customers daily, but does he have another visitor from an unearthly realm?
I know there's a lot of history in this town, and there have been a lot of other things in this town that people have seen and heard. Several times, whether we were busy or slow, I've heard strange occurrences coming from the upper level of the store. This is the boat room where, on several occasions, I've heard this sound, and the footsteps would start right here in the corner and walk right along the edge all the way to the end. Well, down here on the end, I heard the door open. Well, upstairs on the third level is exactly where the hallway used to be years ago, going right down here. And it really scared me. This is why I went running out of the store next door to tell the lady at the real estate agency. And she was scared too because of everything she's heard.
Oh, I just remember Kevin walking in and saying, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "Well, did you hear those noises?" And I said, "Yeah, but I think it must be something between the buildings." He said, "No, it's not. It's something." He said he thinks that there's a ghost.
Now this stairwell, located right in front of me, leads up to the doorway of exactly where that door was screeching. Right here, when we were down in the other room, I pointed exactly to the doorway, and it's exactly where this door is located, where all the sounds come from. And as you can see, looking down through here is the hallway that leads right above the boat room. And this is where all the sounds were coming. This, years ago, as you can see, seems to look like a dining room. As you can tell by the wallpaper that's cracked off, this whole upstairs dates way, way back. The chandelier is the original chandelier from years and years ago. That's the only reason I believe that this was a dining room at one time.
Can spirits become embedded in their former homes, destined to walk alone, repeating their steps and motions throughout eternity?
Nothing has really hurt us or wanted us out of here. It's always been basically sounds of somebody going their own way, doing what they were doing at the time and not bothering us.
So, I mean, off and on I've heard funny noises, and I don't think a whole lot of it. Then Kevin comes in and he'll ask me if I heard that, and I'll go, well, I did hear it, but, you know, there must be a logical explanation for it.
Just down the road and around the bend, while remodeling a St. Ignace bed and breakfast, two carpenters scared up a spirit from the past. After an evening out, O'Neill Campbell remained downstairs to finish watching a movie on television while his wife Sandra, the inn's owner, retired to bed.
After one night, me and my wife come inside and we were watching a show. After the movie, she was tired, and I was tired. So it was a nice movie, so I was like waiting till the movie finished, and she was like saying, come on. So I said to her, no, I was watching all this movie, it's gonna finish about 15 minutes or 10 minutes.
The late hour got the best of him, and soon he dozed off on the floor. What happened next, he'd remember for the rest of his life. When O'Neill awoke, he couldn't move. His body was paralyzed, pressed down upon the
I
floor.
was so shocked. I couldn't move. I was like calling out, Sandra, I can't move. Sandra.
With his wife asleep upstairs, O'Neill suddenly realized that he was not alone. While he was still unable to move, a woman entered the
I
room.
saw somebody passing by in this long skirt. She was holding the cart. She was barely moving her feet and going through the door. So after that, I get up and go around and ask her, Sandra, you went somebody the room? She said, no, we didn't rent anybody the room. So I said, I just saw a lady passing here pushing a cart. And she said, no.
Curious about the mysterious woman and having heard stories of the home's deceased previous owner, Sandra began to wonder if they were in fact one and the same. She asked longtime resident and family friend John Belangi about Myrtle, the previous owner.
I was over there after they bought it, and she asked me if I could describe what this woman looked like. I says, yeah. She always dressed like a old house dress, and she wore her hair in a bun, pulled right back tight. And not every day, but whenever she had to go shopping, she'd go down to the local, well, it was an A&P store then, and she'd pull this cart, this two-wheel cart, and that's what she'd put her groceries in, and then she'd walk home from there, back from shopping. She said, yeah, it's her, because the way I described her. Her family were well-to-do people back, say, in the 30s, 40s. They died, and she had a brother that he lived in the back, a little house behind, and he died. I'm talking all within about 5-6 years.
Left alone, despondent, and with few friends, Myrtle lived in solitude until her death. Perhaps it was the renovation of her home that shook free Myrtle's spirit. Working on the remodeling project with O'Neill was Jerome Romeo Mitchell. Romeo also had an encounter with Myrtle.
One day while I was down by the basement looking for a screwdriver, I hear a little sound, and when I looked back I saw this lady. She was walking by, passing with a clothes basket. She came up the stairs.
When the owner's young daughter had a sighting of her own, Romeo took action against the spirit.
Sandra told me that our little daughter was seeing her in the ceiling. Our little daughter was seeing this spirit in the ceiling. So she started getting scared and she was crying. She didn't want to come here no more. She didn't want to stay here no more. So I said to her, we need to get dream catchers and horseshoe. So she went at the old Indian store uptown and she get some dream catcher. Oh, I had to place the dream catcher here, right here, so it will scare her away.
She got a dream catcher, Indian relic thing. And she hung that up in the house and they never saw her anymore.
Native legend has it that dream catchers entangle dark spirits within their weave, allowing only positive ones through.
I don't want to see her anymore. I don't even, I don't want to see her anymore. I'm so scared, so I don't want to see her anymore.
I was so scared I didn't really want to see her again.
While some spirits are satisfied with quietly retracing their former steps, others take a more active role in their hauntings.
We raised 9 kids here, and things would happen, and I'd say no self-respecting ghost would ever live here with all this noise.
For generations, this family has lived in this home on the shore of Lake Huron overlooking Mackinac Island. But once again, a renovation unleashed a ghost at the Straits of Mackinac.
My brother Scott and his friend were tearing the carpet up. Well, there was only 2 in the house, and all of a sudden they had took and put my videotapes on the bar.
We were ripping the carpet off, we weren't by the bar. All of a sudden it hits the floor and slides across the floor.
And they didn't think nothing of it. They thought maybe it was the wind.
Never thought nothing of it. But after that night that glass moved, we're sitting at the kitchen table talking, and all of a sudden, he had a glass of water he was drinking, and it slid across the table. And we sat there and looked at each other for probably 30, 40 seconds before either of us said anything, going, did you notice that? I said, yeah, so I just got up and went back to bed. I said, I'm not playing around with this.
Then the next day or two, they started tearing the house apart. And they tore the walls off in the back bathroom to get the old tub out, and they had to go right through that wall, so they decided they're going to leave it off, so it'll be easier for them. That's when it started.
A few days later, Scott was kept awake throughout the night by noises in the basement.
Next morning, they decided they're going to go look and see.
They'd be brave to go see.
What it was. They wouldn't go that night.
We had to literally push our way into the basement. There was so much stuff behind the basement door. We had to push. Marty's about my size too, so there's a lot of stuff behind that basement door. And it cleared off every shelf, every bench, knocked over a standing toolbox, 4-foot high toolbox, knocked it out, emptied it out. Just everything in the basement wasn't where it started. And there was no tracks going in or out of the basement until we went down there.
So they called me in Louisiana. They said, Ma, I hate to tell you this, he said, but the house is haunted. Anyway, I called all the churches here. Nobody would come. No minister, no priest would come. They said there's no such thing.
And
we won't. So I thought, well, if they could get somebody to come in and bless the house.
Left with few options, they sought the guidance of a medium, a woman with the gift of communication with the dead. But at first, this spirit was not in the mood to speak.
Said she wanted to go down to the basement and check it out down there. Well, she goes down to the basement, her and my sister, and lights won't come on. So they come back upstairs and say, well, I want to still go down there, just can I get a flashlight? So I got a flashlight, and I knew that it had worked. I just put batteries in it. Not long before that, flashlight wouldn't work either. So she never ended up going down to the basement. As soon as she was no more out of the driveway, flashlight, look over, it's on. Go down in the morning to the basement lights are all on. But nothing wanted to work while she was here, or wouldn't work while she was here.
When the medium returned, she explained that spirits have been known to feed on both emotional and physical energy, such as the electrical energy coming from the substation near their house, making their home a prime candidate for paranormal activity.
she said, first of all, there's more than one here. Excuse me. She said, you got about 12 here. She said, you live what they call by a portal where they could come in and come out when they want. She, somehow, how they do it, I don't know, but she started writing, and she wrote all these names down. And she says the one that is the leader of the whole bunch, his name is Ernie White. I said, I've never heard of him. And she said, well, ask your grandfather if he knows an Ernie White. So she left, and I said, okay. The next morning I got hold of my grandfather, and I said, now, do you know someone that's Ernie White? He said, yes. He said, let me think a minute. He said, me and your grandmother took care of him in his last couple months of his life. He was from England, and all he had in the world was a brother. So we finally figured out who he was. And so she come back, and I come back and I asked her, I said, ask him, what's he doing? What's the problem? What it was is they had tore the house up and they didn't finish their job. They had one wall off. And they were taking too slow of a time redecorating the house for him.
According to the medium, Ernie gained most of his power through Yvonne's fear. And because of that fear, if he were to be removed, a poltergeist would take his place.
If she was to take him out, a poltergeist would probably take his place because his energy was so strong here. And that poltergeist will hurt you.
Yet as the family grew used to Ernie's presence around the home, their fear waned.
I sat at the table like up in Louisiana. I sat at the table there one night reading his book. Now to my right there's a medicine cabinet sits against the wall, and all of a sudden that door opened up. There come a pill bottle come out there about 10 feet. Okay, you old son of a gun, behave yourself, go on to bed. And I remember them saying something about old Ernie. And I just told him to behave himself, and that was it.
Eventually, Yvonne became comfortable with the spirit.
And she had told me he was going to keep it up till I had enough, where I would yell at him to knock it off, and then he would quit. Call him by name and tell him to knock it off, and he would quit. So he was doing something I can't really remember, but I had enough. Yeah, he moved my coffee cup or something, and I looked at him and said, that's it, I've had it. Just knock it off, Ernie, and that was it. He quit bothering me then. I still hear him once in a while, but not like I used to. Oh, he's still here. Yeah.
He turned that fan on me the other night.
He's here. He let you know that he's here.
But he's not near as active.
Not anymore. Because they told him said that he was getting his power from me. And when I started not being scared of him, he didn't have the power like he was. But I ain't scared of him no more. I just tell him to knock it off.
I've owned the Keyhole Bar for 23 years in Mackinac City, Michigan. And with the bar came a gentleman by the name of Jerry O'Brien. And he is still here, even though he's been gone for quite a while. He's still around. He's here during the day, at night. He'll do stupid things to us. He hides stuff from me all the time. I know he does. And I can just hear him laughing about it too, because he had a great sense of humor. Basically, I think he just likes to hide things from me because he knows how frustrated I get when I can't find something. He will knock a glass off the shelf occasionally, just so I have something else to clean up. Well, that's about it for me, but I mean, as far as the bartenders, they can tell you many stories about doors shutting when they shouldn't be shutting, just funny things happening. And you know it's him just playing his little jokes on you.
Well, this happened, it was within the first year or so that I worked here. Hadn't really closed the bar by myself a whole lot before. One of my first run-through ventures of being here by myself late at night. And so it goes, last call, get everybody out of here, get the place all cleaned up, and the last thing we do at night is we count our tips. So the last thing, count our tips, take the tips, and go home. Well, I was standing over there. All right, well, this is what I was doing the night, my first encounter with Jerry. I was on the back of the bar counting my daily earnings, and I was catching something out of the corner of my eye, and I kept going, counting, do. Finally, my curiosity got the best of me, and I did want to, all right, and kind of blew it off. counted a few more bills, get a few more in order here and stuff and that. Now it's really in the back of my mind. I'm thinking, all right, let's take one more look. Sure as day, there was something there, and I did one of these numbers. I seen that. I left all my money right where it was, and I flew out the door. I didn't lock the door. I didn't do nothing. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if the doors ever got locked that night.
Yeah, you turn the TVs off at night, you get to the back door, they come back on. You know, you see shadows, a little chilly feelings. Spooky here at night when you're by yourself. There's several occasions where things have happened that you just can't explain. I was walking through the kitchen one night to make sure all the fryers and everything were turned off, and a loaf of bread just come and hit me in the shoulder. There was nobody else in here. So needless to say, I ran out of here that night.
We worked our shift at the keyhole, and then when we got done, we went back and we played a game of pool. It was early in the morning, you know, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock probably. And we were back there, we finished our game of pool, put the 8-ball in, and I set the cue ball in the center of the table. And we were walking up to the bar, and we looked there and we hear a pool ball go in. And the ball was in the middle of the table. But I looked behind me to see when I was with a coworker, and I thought she had put the ball in, but she was standing right behind me, and we both turned and looked back at the table, and it was spooky. It was real spooky, that ball going in by itself. Still gives us goosebumps, you know, just to think about that night. Both of us, it does, yeah.
For our next stop on this mysterious journey, we travel west to a group of 21 islands in western Lake Superior. Located near Bayfield, Wisconsin, they're known as the Apostle Islands National Lakeshore, a national park. Within its boundaries is the largest collection of historic lighthouses in the country. One of these lighthouses, the Raspberry Island Lighthouse, is the focus of our next haunting. The lighthouse is open for tours during the summer, and the tour guides interpret and portray the life and work of former lightkeepers.
First of all, I want to welcome you to Raspberry Island, or as we call it out here, the Berry.
Two of these former summer resident guides recall their eerie experiences at the haunted Raspberry Island Lighthouse.
One evening, I was up in the tower and I was playing my flute because that's something that I did in the evenings to kind of relax and kind of wind down my day. I left the door open from the head lighthouse keeper's quarters and I left the key in my residence. I left it open and was playing along, and some folks walked up. It was a nice family, and I saw them coming up, and I was playing, and then I leaned over the railing on the catwalk, and I asked them if they would like to come up and see the lighthouse, and that they would walk through and follow it up to the second floor, and when they got to the light tower, the door was open, and to please come up the stairway to the tower, and I would greet them. And so I was waiting for them to come up, and then finally I heard some knocking down below. And so I went down, and I found that the door had mysteriously locked from the head lighthouse keeper's quarters. So the visitors were on one side of the door, and I was on the other side, and they were locked out from the tower, and I was locked in. I was rather shocked, and I actually became kind of frightened. How could this happen? There was only one skeleton key, and I knew I had unlocked it. That's how I got in the tower in the first place, and I had left the key back in my residence. So I didn't know what to do, and I saw this little window at the base of the tower, and I thought, well, I'll pop out the screen, and then I'll just drop down to the garden. Oh, it was kind of eerie, and I was a little bit frightened too, because I didn't know how it could have gotten locked when there was only one key. So I went back into my residence and I found that key just where I had left it. So I don't know what happened. And I had watched the trail. I had kind of perched my music stand and I was playing my flute so I could see the people coming up the trail. And I could also see if there was anyone that came in from the dock. No one came in. It was really quite something to have that feeling that, you find out that you're not the only being there in that residence, And so, but it was kind of interesting though too, in a way. It kind of gave me that feeling, a sense of history, and that the sense of belonging that those people had.
It was a slow day out at Raspberry in June, and what happened was that there's very few people that sometimes come up there on those days. Usually a boatload of people, sailboat load of about 5-6 people will show up about once every hour and a half, especially on a rainy day.
It was kind of getting a little bit darker. It was misty out, and there was a fog coming in, which was not uncommon. You know, it was a little bit stormy. There was kind of a mist in the air.
One of those boatloads showed up, and what happened was I took them on the tour, and as we were going up the tower, the last person in line, I was taking up the rear, kind of said to me, "So do you and your family live on the other side?"
I was there alone in the evening hours, and I heard this voice, and it was a woman's voice, and I thought, what is going on?
I said, "Well, actually, no, nobody lives over there." He says, "You don't have a kid?" And I said, "No, I don't have a kid." And he says, "Well, that's kind of odd because I hear a kid."
And I went outside, and I distinctly heard, "Mary, Mary," from the back of the lighthouse. So I ran over and I looked at both of the back doors going into the residences on each side of the lighthouse, and I didn't see anybody. And I thought, I kept hearing that voice, and I was like, where is that coming from?
So we got up into the cupola, and we looked outside the building, and we didn't see anybody out there at all. I've got pretty good ears, and I didn't hear a boat approaching or anything like that, and so there was no one out there.
And I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. I thought, okay, somebody's really messing with my mind. So I ran around the front again, and then ran around the back side.
We went ahead and we went back down the tower, and as we were going down, he was still looking pretty disturbed and still taking up the end. So I asked him, you know, "Are you still hearing it?" And he said, "Yes, I am." And I said, "Well, is it a kid?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, what's the kid saying?" And he says, "That's the funny thing. I can't make out really what he's saying. It's kind of like a mutter or a matter. I'm not sure what he's saying." And I said, "Is it mutter?" And he goes, "That's right. That's what the kid's saying over and over again. Exactly. Mutter, mutter, mutter." And I said, "That's strange because that's both Scandinavian and German for mother, mother, mother." I thought right away of the last lighthouse keeper who stayed there all year long, Seth Snow, who had a couple of kids and his wife out there, and they stayed for 5 winters. And I knew that he spoke very little English because he only wrote the temperatures, and every word he wrote in English practically was misspelled, except for, you know, the weather conditions. And I always kind of thought that if that was a ghost, you know, that was Seth Snow, Seth Snow's kid.
The Raspberry Island Lighthouse is the most accessible of the 6 historic Apostle Island light stations. During the summer, Apostle Island Cruise Service's tour boats stop at the island, and National Park Service rangers conduct tours of the historic lighthouse and tower. From Raspberry Island, we skip over land to the shore of northern Lake Michigan and a narrow peninsula called Choix Pointe. More than a century ago, a smallpox epidemic struck the area. The dreaded disease killed scores of natives and white people. Because of the rocky limestone shoreline, places of burial were scarce. But the Choix Pointe area has miles of sand dunes, and for hundreds of years these sandhills served as a burial ground for unmarked graves. The trip to the lighthouse at Choix Pointe was a long and winding ride. In 1939, the Road Commission decided to widen and straighten the Choix Road. Plowing through a sandhill, they unearthed a mass of ancient graves, unleashing spirits and hauntings that have plagued the area to this day. An old commercial fisherman recalled his boyhood experiences with the spirits at Choix.
But that road was just clear ice. You could see the moon just shining on it. Of course, I stopped Uncle John's.
One evening, it was Junior's turn to get fresh water with his sled from the pump by the Choix school. He decided to stop by Grandma Goodrow's house to see his Uncle John.
He said, "Hey, Junior," he said, "I think you better get home here. Water's going to be froze out there. It's probably froze off." So I opened the door. Same as that, moonlight, just bright. And when I shut the door, was going to go, I could see something, lights, glittered. I was looking all over. Now this is true. I was the only one, and they're both gone. Right just before you get to the house, there was I don't know, I'd say as big as around this living room. And it was made like a top. It kind of rounded off and came down, not real peaking. And it had a kind of a peak on it, only round. Well, if you could have seen that, you just wouldn't believe it. I never seen nothing in my life as pretty as that. It was all lights. It looked about this big around. One all the way down, all the way down, all different colors, and they were all moving, glittering. And it was spinning real slow and bouncing at the same time. So right away, I went in and said, "Uncle John, come out here. There's something up there." And he laughed. I said, "I'm not kidding you." "Okay," he said, so he come out and he got to the porch. It was just...
What's up there, Junior?
I'd say about 300 feet above the house.
In the sky?
Right over them both houses. And we stood there with our mouths open, looking. So when it went down, as you know, over there by the house, at Lizzie's house, there was a road there that went over the hill, and that rock all went down like that. So we watched it, and it just disappeared below the trees. So I said to Uncle John, he said, "I suppose you're scared now." I says, "No, what is it?" "Well, my boy," he said, "I can still hear." He says, "That's called a jack-o'-lantern." I says, "A jack-o'-lantern? What the heck is that?" "Well, wait till I get done now." And he says, "It's a sign of a death in the family." And he says, "Your auntie over there, she's pretty sick there, and that's all he said. That's what it is. That's all I can tell you. That's the prettiest thing I ever seen in my life, even though as young as I was. All this 4th of July lights, and I think of that every time, when they go up and all kinds of lights blurred out. That was, well, anyway, a week after Aunt Lizzie died. So there you go.
One evening during early winter, Junior was walking home from the Choix lighthouse area. As he drew near the school, he approached a diamond-shaped yellow sign and could not believe his eyes.
Start walking, and it was, it was one of them nights that took a long time to get dark, it'd be kind of dark. Well, by the old schoolhouse was there, it was sitting there then. And had a little shed, and you know where the pump is, that's where the pump always was, and you can see where the trees growed, where the foundation was. Of course, it was open there a little bit, all the trees growed right where it was built, where after it left there. So there was a sign there, a diamond-shaped yellow sign, said school slow or something like that. So I'm coming home, And all it was, I can't hardly explain it to you. There's a man in front of me, black, you know, it's just that dark. And I just froze there. I never moved, never even blinked an eye. I was so scared so quick. Now why, I don't know. I just stood there and all at once it kind of come right into that sign, come right out. The holy man, how come? Well, I can't still figure that out. Oh well, just me, I guess. Kept thinking about it, and I started, and from there, where that grave was dug up, there was this kind of a sand, there still is, this kind of a corner like. Well, the county was fixing that road then. The other road was back further. I was going, and just before you get to that hill, I'd have to show you where the trees are still there. I just happened to went like that, and there's a skeleton hanging in the tree. Well, I knew that grave was dug up. I looked at it, and oh, now what? Well, I kept on going real slow, you know. I still think somebody hung that on to scare me, but I don't know who it would be. Oh, well, so I kept going. If there's anybody going to grab me, you know, I had much choice then. I gets around that corner, from that corner, all the way past till the next one's quite a little stretch there, open. Well, I got around the corner, and all at once some streaks are going across like that, up about 6-8 feet, all the way down to the road. Oh, what the hell is that? It's just what I said. And it was the color of a plastic line, like, you know, and that's the way it went. Only just quick. All of them. I just thought, no, what the heck is that? The hell am I going to do now? Well, I went through the other two, so I'll keep going. If I hit them or whatever it is, I'll find out what it is. I'm all by myself, you know. And I wasn't too old then either. So I kept going, and I got, I'd say from that close, near that wall. And they just disappeared that quick. You know, I was beginning to think there was something wrong with me. Maybe there was at the time, but I don't know.
He quickly ran home to tell his mother what he had seen.
Goodness, what is wrong with you? You act like you've seen a ghost.
I saw a man in black, a real skeleton hanging from the tree, and wavy lines in front of me on the road. What could this be, Mother?
Well, I don't know about the rest of it, but the wavy lines are rock spirits.
Strange and unexplainable things often happen around water. For reasons unknown to the longtime fishermen visiting small, uninhabited Gull Island in Lake Michigan, many have had dealings with the spirit of Jasper. One summer, long ago, Agnes Goodrow and her son waited on the shore for the men in the family to come in from their fishing trip. She had cooked for the fishing crew, and they were long overdue. As her eyes searched the horizon for some clue to the men's whereabouts, off in the distance, she saw a dark, human-like figure emerge from the water and walk into the woods. A short time later, the figure came out of the trees and walked back into the water. After a few moments, it again left the lake and returned to the woods. This went on several times, and with each trip, the eerie figure edged closer and closer to Agnes and her son. Fearful, Agnes began saying the rosary for guidance and protection. She was on her third set of prayers when the figure came close enough for Agnes to realize that it had no face. Mother and son stood silently, frozen in horror, as they watched the figure enter the water one last time and slowly disappear. Were Agnes and her son secretly spying on the spirit of a lost fisherman whose destiny was to scour the bottom of the lake for dead sailors' bones and sunken treasure? Does the spirit of Jasper still roam the depths of northern Lake Michigan? For centuries, Lake Michigan has been a highway for schooners, freighters, and commercial fishermen. Most of this northern maritime traffic passed right by Gull Island. Two fishermen, brothers Vern and Harvey Goodrow, one day stopped to set their nets near the deserted island. The haunting stories they had heard from other fishermen about Jasper the ghost they considered to be bunk. The two men pitched their tents for an overnight stay and built a fire to make coffee and their evening meal. They went into the nearby woods to gather more firewood for the night, but returned to the campsite in a short time.
Must have gone out. Gone out? No fire here at all. It disappeared. No ashes, nothing. Well, it disappeared. This is our camp.
What's that down there?
Where?
Down there in the rocks. I thought you said you built the fire here.
Well, I did. What's it doing down there?
To their astonishment, their roaring campfire had been moved down the beach. How could that happen when they were the only people alive on Gull Island? The men stood in bewilderment. The fire that was in front of their tents was completely gone.
Well, you were here when I built it.
True enough.
I can't believe this.
No sign of the fire, burnt wood, or ashes existed in the original spot. But there's more.
Something we're going to have to think about overnight. I'll sleep on that. I don't understand it at all.
Yeah, you know what they say. Strange things happen on this island.
They sure do.
See you in the morning. I'm going to turn in.
Me too.
Later, when it was time to bed down for the night, a terrible howling, like a wild animal, circled their tents. It came from the woods and moved closer and closer. The men nearly died of fright. It made true believers of them, and they vowed never again to set foot on Gull Island.